On a freezing Christmas night in Riverside Park, Marcus, a single father, just wanted to quickly take his young daughter home after a long, exhausting day. The bright holiday atmosphere around them only made him miss his late wife even more. Then Marcus suddenly noticed a strange woman sitting alone on a stone bench crying. Before he could react, his daughter ran over to her instinctively, and just a few seconds later, the little girl spoke an innocent sentence. One that made the woman burst into sobs and left Marcus frozen in place. He had no idea that this single moment was about to completely change the lives of all three of them. Before we go back, let us know where you're watching from. And subscribe, because tomorrow I've got something extra special for you. The December air bit cold as Marcus Hayes walked through Riverside Park, his daughter Riley's small hand tucked firmly in his. Christmas lights draped every tree, every lamppost transforming the ordinary into something magical. Families clustered around hot chocolate stands. Children shrieked with delight as they raced between light displays, and the smell of roasted chestnuts hung thick in the winter air. Marcus should have felt part of it all, but grief had a way of making you an outsider even in a crowd. Riley tugged his hand, her eyes bright with wonder. "Daddy, look at that one." She pointed to a massive reindeer made entirely of white lights, its antlers stretching toward the sky. "Beautiful baby girl." Marcus managed a smile, though his chest felt tight. 4 years since Sarah died. 4 years of being both mother and father, of stumbling through bedtime stories and braiding hair wrong and wondering every single day if he was enough. 4 years of waking up alone. They walked past families taking photos, past couples holding hands, past everything that reminded Marcus of what they'd lost. The happy chaos should have been comforting, but instead it felt like a spotlight on their incompleteness. A father and daughter. No mother to complete the picture. He was about to suggest they head home when Riley stopped short. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice suddenly serious. "That lady is crying." Marcus followed her gaze. Beneath an oak tree strung with soft white lights sat a woman alone on a stone bench. Late 20s, maybe early 30s, with long blonde hair catching the glow overhead. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs, her face buried in her hands. She wore an elegant charcoal coat that looked expensive but worn, like something she'd had for years and couldn't bear to replace. Around them, the world celebrated. Music played, people laughed, children ran. But she sat alone, completely isolated in a sea of joy. "Baby, we should give her privacy," Marcus started, but Riley had already pulled free from his grip. "Riley, wait!" Marcus called, his heart lurching. But his daughter was already running toward the crying woman, her small feet crunching through snow, her purple mittens swinging at her sides. Marcus hurried after her, panic rising. You couldn't just approach strangers, especially not ones clearly in distress. What would he even say? What if the woman didn't want help? What if she thought they were crazy? But Riley had always been like Sarah, that way, unable to ignore someone hurting. It was like she had a radar for pain. "Don't cry, ma'am." Riley's small voice cut through the evening air like a bell. "You can borrow our dad to make you feel better." Marcus froze mid-step. His heart dropped straight into his stomach. The words hung in the cold air, impossible to take back. The woman looked up, tears streaming down her face. Her eyes were red, and swollen mascara smudged beneath them in dark streaks. She had the kind of face that was probably beautiful when she smiled, but right now it was ravaged by grief. She stared at Riley with pure shock, like she couldn't quite believe what she'd heard. "Riley," Marcus managed, his voice strangled. "Baby, you can't just—" "It's okay," Riley said earnestly, her hand reaching out to touch the woman's knee. Her small fingers looked impossibly tiny against the charcoal fabric. "Daddy's really good at making people feel better, and me too. We're experts." The woman's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked at Riley, then at Marcus, standing awkwardly a few feet away, and something in her expression crumbled further. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry," Marcus gasped, reaching them. His breath formed clouds in the cold air. "She doesn't understand boundaries yet, and He ran his hand over his face, feeling like the worst parent in the world. "We'll leave you alone. Riley, come on." "Nobody should be sad and alone at Christmas." Riley interrupted her 7-year-old logic, cutting straight to the heart of things. She climbed up onto the bench beside the woman without hesitation, settling in like she belonged there. "So, you can borrow us for a while. We're good at helping." The woman wiped her face with trembling hands. Up close, Marcus could see she was younger than he'd first thought, maybe early 30s. She wore no rings, no jewelry, except small pearl earrings that caught the light. There was something about the way she held herself, like she was trying to take up as little space as possible in the world. "That's very sweet of you," the woman said, her voice hoarse and fragile like glass about to break. "Both of you." "I'm Riley," his daughter announced, pointing to a tiny freckle near her left ear. "See, that's how people know it's me and not somebody else. I'm special." Despite everything, the woman let out a breath that was half laugh, half sob. "You certainly are." "I'm Marcus." He extended his hand, feeling ridiculous and helpless. What was he doing? This woman didn't want strangers bothering her. "Again, I apologize. She has a habit of adopting people." "Please don't apologize," the woman interrupted softly, taking his hand. Her fingers were ice cold, like she'd been sitting out here for hours. "She's lovely. Her voice broke. "She's very kind." "I'm Grace," the woman added, releasing his hand. "Grace Thompson." Before Marcus could respond, Riley had taken one of Grace's hands in both of hers. "See, we're excellent at this. Sometimes people just need someone to sit with them. That's what Daddy says. He says being lonely is the worst feeling in the whole world." Grace stared at the small hands holding hers. A tear slid down her cheek, but this time she was almost smiling. "You're very perceptive, Riley." Marcus stood awkwardly, recognizing the rawness in Grace's expression. He'd worn that same look 4 years ago when the doctor said there was nothing more they could do. When every breath felt like drowning and the world kept spinning without asking permission. When people said it would get better, but you knew they were lying, because nothing would ever be the same again. "We were going to get hot chocolate." Riley continued swinging Grace's hand gently. "You should come with us. It helps when you're sad." "I don't want to intrude." "You're not," Marcus heard himself say before he could think better of it. His daughter's eyes met his, pleading and determined. And something about Grace's loneliness called to his own, the kind of loneliness that lived in your bones, even when you were surrounded by people. Besides, I learned long ago not to argue when Riley decides something. She's more stubborn than I am. The smile that touched Grace's lips was small, but genuine. "Then thank you. I'd like that very much." Riley beamed like she'd just won a prize. She hopped off the bench and took Grace's hand, already pulling her toward the park entrance. "Come on. Mrs. Thompson makes the best hot chocolate in the whole city. She puts extra whipped cream on top and candy canes for stirring." Marcus fell into step beside them, watching his daughter chat away to this stranger like they'd been friends forever. Grace walked slowly, like she wasn't quite sure this was real. Like she might wake up and find herself alone on that bench again. The Magnolia Cafe sat on the corner of Main and Oak, warm light spilling from its windows. The bell above the door chimed as they entered, and the scent of cinnamon and coffee enveloped them immediately. Mrs. Thompson, the owner, looked up from behind the counter. She was a round woman in her 60s with kind eyes and silver hair pulled into a bun. Her face lit up when she saw them. "Marcus Riley. Good evening." Then her gaze landed on Grace and curiosity sparked in her expression. "And who's your friend?" "This is Miss Grace," Riley announced, proudly pulling Grace toward their usual corner booth. "We found her in the park, and she was sad, so we're making her feel better." Marcus wanted to sink through the floor, leave it to a 7-year-old to announce someone's emotional state to the entire cafe. But Mrs. Thompson just smiled warmly like crying strangers were brought in every day. "Then you're in excellent hands, dear," she said to Grace. "These two have the biggest hearts in the city." They slid into the worn leather booth, Riley claiming the window seat so she could watch the snow beginning to fall. Marcus sat across from them, acutely aware of how strange this must look. A grown man and a child bringing home a crying stranger on Christmas Eve. What was he thinking? But when he looked at Grace, saw the way her shoulders had relaxed slightly, saw the ghost of a smile on her lips as Riley chattered about the snow, he thought maybe this was exactly what she needed. Mrs. Thompson brought 3 hot chocolates each, topped with mountains of whipped cream and red and white striped candy cane stirs. Riley immediately attacked hers, getting whipped cream on her nose within seconds. "Riley, use a napkin," Marcus said automatically. Grace actually laughed, and the sound was like sunlight breaking through clouds. "I think the whipped cream mustache is part of the experience." Riley grinned, showing her missing front tooth. "See, Daddy Miss Grace gets it." Silence settled over the table after that. Marcus wrapped his hands around his mug, trying to figure out what to say. What did you say to a stranger you just met in crisis? The normal small talk seemed insulting, but diving into why she'd been crying seemed invasive. Grace spoke first, her hands wrapped around the warm mug like she was trying to draw heat into her very soul. You have a beautiful daughter. Thank you. The words came out heavier than Marcus intended, weighted with 4 years of being everything to Riley. 4 years of teacher conferences alone, of birthday parties where he was the only parent, of tucking her in every night and wondering if he was enough. She's my world. Grace's eyes met his across the table, and something flickered there. Recognition, understanding, like she saw past the words to the exhaustion and fear beneath them. I can see that. She's lucky to have you. Why were you crying, Miss Grace? Riley asked suddenly, her voice cutting through the adult careful stepping with the brutal honesty only children possessed. Did someone hurt your feelings? Riley Marcus started heat rising in his cheeks. That's not appropriate. It's okay, Grace interrupted quietly. She looked at Riley carefully, seeming to measure how much truth a 7-year-old could handle. Then she took a deep breath, her shoulders rising and falling. I was sad because Christmas makes me remember people I miss very much. Like people who died? Riley asked, her eyes wide. Marcus's stomach dropped. Riley, that's not something we ask. Yes, Grace said, her voice barely above a whisper. Like people who died. Riley nodded solemnly, like she understood more than she should. She reached across the table and patted Grace's hand with sticky fingers. Our mommy died too, when I was 3. I don't remember her much, but Daddy says she's watching over me from heaven. The air seemed to leave the cafe. Marcus sat frozen, stunned. Riley rarely talked about Sarah, especially not to strangers. He usually kept that information private, locked away in a box where it couldn't hurt as much. But Grace's eyes filled with tears. Not sad ones exactly, but something softer, gentler. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. That must have been incredibly hard. It was, Marcus said, his voice rough. He didn't usually talk about this, but something about Grace's openness, her raw honesty, made pretending seem pointless, made the walls he'd built seem ridiculous. She had breast cancer, stage 4 by the time they caught it. We had 2 years from diagnosis to... He couldn't finish the sentence. Riley was barely 3 when we lost her. I'm so sorry, Grace whispered, in the way she said it like she truly understood, made Marcus's chest ache. I lost my family too, Grace said suddenly, the words tumbling out like she'd been holding them back for too long, like a dam breaking. She looked at Riley, then at Marcus, and he saw the moment she decided to trust them with her story. My parents and my brother and my sister, all at once, 8 years ago. Riley's eyes went impossibly wide. All of them. Grace nodded, a tear escaping despite her efforts to hold it back. It traced a slow path down her cheek, and she didn't bother to wipe it away. All of them. They were on a plane coming to visit me. I was in New York for work. They were supposed to land at 6 p.m. Her voice cracked. The plane went down over the Atlantic. No survivors. The words hung in the air, heavy and awful. Marcus felt his throat close up. He couldn't imagine it. Losing Sarah had nearly destroyed him, but she'd been sick. They'd had time to say goodbye. But losing everyone all at once without warning, you must be very lonely, Riley said, her voice trembling with understanding beyond her years. Then, without warning, she scrambled out of her seat and wrapped her small arms around Grace's waist. Grace's breath hitched. For a moment, she sat frozen. Then her arms came around Riley, and she held the little girl close while her shoulders shook with silent sobs. Years of grief poured out in that embrace, witnessed by a stranger and his daughter in a small cafe on Christmas Eve. Marcus watched his own throat tight with unshed tears. His daughter was hugging a woman they'd met 20 minutes ago, and somehow it felt like the most natural thing in the world. We know about lonely, Riley whispered into Grace's coat. Daddy gets lonely sometimes too, even though he tries to hide it. I hear him crying sometimes at night when he thinks I'm asleep. Marcus's breath caught. He hadn't known she'd heard him. All those nights he'd broken down after she was in bed, thinking he was protecting her, she'd known all along. Grace looked up at Marcus over Riley's head, her eyes streaming. In that moment, they weren't strangers anymore. They were just people who understood loss, who knew what it meant to keep breathing when everything felt impossible, who knew the weight of waking up every morning and choosing to keep going. Thank you, Grace managed, her voice breaking. Thank you for stopping. Most people just walk by. You looked like you needed a hug, Riley said, simply pulling back. Everybody needs hugs, especially at Christmas." They sat there for a long moment, the three of them in that corner booth, while Christmas music played softly overhead and snow fell outside the window. Other customers came and went, couples on dates, families getting treats after dinner, teenagers laughing too loud. But their table felt separate, protected. Finally, Grace wiped her eyes and laughed shakily. "I'm sorry. I'm so emotional. You must think I'm crazy." "Daddy says feelings aren't wrong," Riley informed her, climbing back into her seat and returning to her hot chocolate. "They just are. You can't help feeling sad when you miss people." "Your daddy is very wise," Grace said, looking at Marcus with something like wonder. "I have my moments," Marcus said, managing a small smile. The conversation shifted, then the walls down. Grace told them about her company's sustainable hair care products that she'd started 5 years ago with money from the life insurance policies. How throwing herself into work kept her from thinking about empty apartments and phones that never rang. How every holiday was a minefield of memories. Marcus talked about his architecture firm, about how designing buildings gave him problems with solutions when grief had none. How Riley kept him tethered to the world when all he wanted to do was drift away. How some days just getting out of bed felt like climbing a mountain. "People kept telling me time would heal it," Grace said, stirring her now cool chocolate. "But they were wrong. Time just makes you better at pretending, better at smiling when you're dying inside. Until you're sitting alone on a park bench on Christmas Eve," Marcus said softly, "and you just can't pretend anymore. Until a little girl decides you need rescuing," Grace corrected, smiling at Riley with genuine warmth. Riley looked up from drawing shapes in her whipped cream. "Are you going to be alone tomorrow too, on Christmas Day?" The question hung heavy in the air. Grace's smile faltered, and Marcus saw her throat work as she swallowed hard. "Yes, sweetie." "What do you do?" Riley pressed her face scrunched with concern. "I work mostly, or watch movies. Try not to think about." Grace stopped, her voice breaking. "I try to get through the day as fast as possible." "That's not Christmas," Riley declared with the firm conviction only children possessed. "Christmas is supposed to have people, and presents, and too much food, and laughing until your stomach hurts." Marcus watched Grace's face crumble slightly, watched her fight to hold together, and something in him shifted. Something that had been frozen for 4 years began to thaw. But Riley beat him to it. "You should come to our house tomorrow," she said, like it was the simplest thing in the world. Like inviting grieving strangers to Christmas was something they did every year. "We have presents, and Daddy makes snowman pancakes, and we watch movies all day. Right, Daddy?" Marcus met Grace's eyes across the table. He saw hope there mixed with fear and uncertainty and desperate longing. A woman who'd been alone for 8 years being offered a lifeline by a 7-year-old who didn't know the word impossible. He should say no, should make an excuse. They didn't know this woman. She could be anyone. But he'd seen her grief, recognized it like meeting an old friend. And Riley was right. Nobody should be alone on Christmas. "She's right," he heard himself say. "You shouldn't be alone tomorrow. Nothing fancy, I promise. Just pancakes and chaos and too many Christmas movies. But there'll be laughter, and you'd be very welcome." "I couldn't impose." Grace's voice cracked, but her eyes held hope like a drowning person clutching a rope. "You're not imposing. You'd be doing us a favor." Marcus paused, choosing his words carefully. "The holidays are hard when you've lost someone. Sarah's parents are gone, and mine live in Seattle. It's usually just Riley and me trying to make it special. But it would be nice to have another adult around, someone who understands that Christmas can be beautiful and hard at the same time." Grace looked at Riley, then back at Marcus. Her hands trembled around her mug. "Are you sure you don't know anything about me? I'm a complete stranger." "We know you've been through loss," Marcus said gently. "We know you're brave enough to sit in a park full of happy families, even when it hurts. We know you're kind enough to let a strange child tell you about her dead mother without running away. That's enough." A genuine smile spread across Grace's face, transforming it. With the grief temporarily lifted, Marcus could see how beautiful she was. Not just physically, but in the way she looked at Riley with such tenderness, in the way her eyes lit up with gratitude. "Then yes," Grace whispered. "Thank you. I'd love to come." Riley erupted in cheers, nearly knocking over her hot chocolate. "This is going to be the best Christmas ever. We have to make extra pancakes. Daddy and Miss Grace can help me with my new art set if Santa brings one." Marcus laughed, feeling something loosen in his chest, something that had been tight for 4 years. "Okay, baby girl, extra pancakes it is." They exchanged phone numbers and addresses. Grace typed their information into her phone with trembling fingers, like she was afraid it might disappear if she didn't capture it immediately. When they finally left the cafe an hour later, the snow was falling heavier. Marcus walked Grace to her car, a modest sedan covered in a light dusting of white. "Thank you," Grace said again, her breath fogging in the cold air. "For tonight, for tomorrow, for not walking past me." "Thank you for trusting us," Marcus replied, "for being vulnerable enough to let us in." Grace smiled, but her eyes were serious. "I almost didn't come to the park tonight. I almost stayed home, but something told me to go to try to feel something. And then Riley appeared, and," she laughed shakily, "I don't believe in fate or destiny or any of that, but this feels like something, like maybe I was supposed to meet you both." "Maybe you were," Marcus said softly. They stood there in the falling snow, two people who'd known terrible loss connected by a 7-year-old's inability to ignore suffering. "Tomorrow," Grace said. 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock. We'll be waiting." Grace got in her car and drove away, her taillights disappearing into the snowy night. Riley tugged Marcus's hand. "She's really nice, Daddy." "She is, baby. I think Mommy would like her." Marcus's breath caught. He looked down at his daughter, her dark eyes serious and knowing. "I think you're right." Walking home through the snow, Riley's hand in his, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in 4 years. Hope. The possibility that life might hold more than just getting through each day. That maybe, just maybe, there was still room for joy. Christmas morning dawned, bright and cold frost painting delicate patterns on the windows. Marcus woke early as he always did and lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Sarah's side of the bed had been empty for 4 years, but some mornings it still surprised him. Some mornings he still reached out expecting warmth and finding cold sheets instead. Today, though, his thoughts weren't on Sarah. They were on Grace and the promise Riley had extracted from her last night. He'd given a stranger their address, invited her into their home, into their Christmas. What if she didn't come? What if she woke up and realized how crazy this was, spending the holiday with people she'd met 12 hours ago? What if she did come? What then? Daddy Riley burst into his room, already dressed in her favorite red sweater, with a reindeer on it. "Is Miss Grace coming?" "She's coming, right. She promised." "She said she would, baby." But what if she changed her mind? What if she's alone again? Riley's face scrunched with worry. Marcus pulled Riley into a hug, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. "Then we'll call her and make sure she's okay. But I think she'll come." She seemed excited. "She was sad, Daddy. Really, really sad. Sadder than you get sometimes." Marcus's chest tightened. "I know, baby. We're going to make her happy today, right? We're going to try our best." They went downstairs and made breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast. Riley could barely eat, too excited and nervous. She kept checking the clock, counting down the minutes until 10. At 9:55, she positioned herself by the front window, nose pressed to the glass. "I see a car. Is that her?" "No, that's Mrs. Jenkins." "Another car. Is that Daddy? That's her." At exactly 10 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Riley raced to the door, Marcus following more slowly. His heart pounded stupidly hard. When Riley pulled the door open, Grace stood on their porch, arms full of wrapped presents, her expression uncertain but hopeful. She'd changed 3 times that morning, finally settling on dark jeans and a cream cable knit sweater. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore minimal makeup. She looked younger, somehow more vulnerable than last night. "Hi," she said softly, her eyes finding Marcus's. "Hi." He couldn't stop staring. In the warm morning light, without tears and smudged mascara, she was beautiful, genuinely, breathtakingly beautiful. "Miss Grace, you came." Riley threw herself at Grace's legs, nearly sending the presents flying. "Of course I came." Grace laughed, dropping to her knees to hug Riley properly, somehow managing not to drop anything. "I wouldn't miss this for the world." Santa came. Riley grabbed her hand, pulling her inside. "He ate all the cookies and left so many presents. And we waited for you because Daddy said we couldn't start without you. And I've been waiting forever and—" "Riley, breathe," Marcus said, taking Grace's coat. "Let Miss Grace get inside before you explode." Grace laughed a real laugh that made her whole face light up. "It's okay. I love the enthusiasm." The living room was beautifully chaotic. The tree leaned slightly left. It always did, no matter how carefully Marcus set it up. It was covered in mismatched ornaments spanning years, handmade preschool ones with Riley's tiny handprints, delicate glass ones that had been Sarah's grandmother's new ones Riley had picked out last year at the Christmas market. Mountains of presents spilled underneath, wrapped in paper, featuring everything from Santa to snowflakes to Disney princesses. "This is lovely," Grace whispered, taking it all in. Her eyes lingered on a photo on the mantel Marcus, Sarah, and baby Riley taken just months before Sarah's diagnosis. "It's chaos," Marcus corrected gently, "but it's our chaos." "I brought presents," Grace announced, pulling out the wrapped packages. "I hope that's okay. I know we just met, but I couldn't come empty-handed." "You didn't have to do that," Marcus started, but Riley was already reaching for them. "Can I put them under the tree?" "Of course, sweetheart." Riley carefully arranged Grace's gifts with the others, treating them like precious treasures. Grace handed Marcus a smaller package separately. "For you. Open it later if you want." Their fingers brushed when he took it, and Marcus felt a jolt of something he hadn't felt in years. Awareness. Attraction. He pushed it down quickly. Too soon. Too complicated. Riley was already pulling Grace down to the floor by the tree, chattering about each ornament and what it meant. "See this one? I made it in kindergarten. It's supposed to be an angel, but it looks more like a blob with wings. And this one was Mommy's. Daddy says she loved angels. And this one..." Grace listened to every word like it mattered, asked questions, laughed at Riley's jokes. Marcus leaned against the doorframe, watching them, something warm spreading through his chest. She fit here. Somehow, impossibly, a woman they'd met last night fit into their home like a missing puzzle piece. "Can I open presents now?" Riley asked, bouncing with barely contained energy. "Go ahead, baby." Riley attacked the present pile with the enthusiasm only 7-year-olds possessed. Paper flu squeals echoed through the house, and Marcus documented it all on his phone like he did every year. Grace sat on the floor, her back against the couch, smiling at Riley's excitement. When Riley opened Grace's gift, a professional watercolor set with dozens of colors, thick artist-grade paper reels, sable brushes, a wooden palette, she went completely silent. Marcus held his breath, worried something was wrong. Then Riley whispered, "These are like real artist supplies, like what real painters use." "Because you're a real artist," Grace said, seriously leaning forward. "I saw your drawings last night at the cafe, the one you did on your napkin. You have talent, Riley. Real talent, and real artists deserve real supplies." Riley's eyes filled with tears. "Nobody's ever given me grown-up art stuff before." "Well, now you have it, and I expect to see amazing paintings." Grace smiled. "Maybe you'll let me see them sometime." Riley launched herself at Grace, nearly knocking her over, the art supplies scattering. "Thank you, Miss Grace. Thank you so much. This is the best present I've ever gotten." Marcus felt his throat tighten. Sarah had always been the thoughtful gift giver, the one who saw what people needed before they knew themselves, who remembered tiny details from months-old conversations. But here was Grace, who'd met Riley yesterday, and she'd seen his daughter's soul, seen the artist hiding behind crayon drawings and cheap markers. "I have something for you too, Miss Grace," Riley said, scrambling up. She grabbed a gift from under the tree, clearly wrapped by Riley herself, with about a full roll of tape and paper that didn't quite cover the box. "You didn't have to get me anything," Grace said, but her eyes were bright. "Open it." Inside was a handmade card construction paper, covered in so much glitter it was still falling off. On the front stick, figures holding hands, 3 figures being joined by a 4th with blonde hair. Hearts and stars surrounded them. Inside, in Riley's careful, somewhat wobbly handwriting, "Dear Miss Grace, thank you for being sad in the park so we could find you. You make us happy. Love, Riley and Daddy." Grace pressed the card to her chest, tears streaming down her face. "This is the most beautiful thing anyone's ever given me." "Really?" Riley looked skeptical. "It's just paper and glitter." "No," Grace said firmly, pulling Riley close. "It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. I'm going to put it in a frame and keep it forever." They spent the rest of the morning opening presents. Marcus opened Grace's gift to him, a leather-bound journal with his initials embossed on the cover and a note inside for sketches or thoughts or whatever helps you process. Sometimes we need a place to put the feelings we can't say out loud. He stared at it, stunned. How had she known, how had she understood in one evening that he needed this "thank you"? He said, his voice rough. "This is perfect." Grace smiled, understanding in her eyes. "You're welcome." After breakfast, snowman pancakes that Grace hilariously failed to flip, sending one across the kitchen and making Riley giggle until she couldn't breathe. They settled in the living room. Riley spread out her new paints on the coffee table, and Grace sat on the floor with her showing her how to mix colors, create washes, blend shades. Marcus sat on the couch supposedly reading a book, actually watching them. Grace's hands guided Riley's gently, patiently. See, if you want purple twilight, you start with blue and add just a tiny bit of red. Too much, and it's too pink. Not enough, and it's just blue. Like this. Exactly like that. You're a natural. Riley beamed the kind of pure joy that made Marcus's chest ache. His daughter was happy. Completely unself-consciously happy. And Grace was smiling too. Really smiling, the grief momentarily forgotten. She fit here. In his messy house with syrup still on the kitchen counter and wrapping paper everywhere and chaos all around. She fit like she'd always been meant to. During the Polar Express that afternoon, Riley's Christmas tradition, Riley fell asleep with her head on Grace's lap. Grace gently stroked the girl's dark curls, her expression soft and almost wistful. "She's out," Marcus whispered. "She had a big day." Grace smiled down at Riley. "Thank you for this, for today. This was the best Christmas I've had in 8 years. Yeah. She looked at him over the sleeping child, and Marcus saw vulnerability and gratitude, and something else he couldn't quite name. "I forgot what it felt like to belong somewhere, to be part of something. For the past 8 years, I've just been surviving, getting through days. But this feels like living. Thank you for being here, for being so good with her." Marcus paused, "for not running away when she brought up Sarah, for sharing about your family." Grace's eyes filled. "She makes it easy. She's remarkable, Marcus. Truly. You've done an amazing job raising her. Most days I feel like I'm barely holding it together. Most days I feel the same way about my company, but we're both doing better than we think." They sat in comfortable silence, the movie playing softly, snow falling outside. The Christmas lights on the tree cast colored shadows across the room. Outside, the world was cold and white. Inside, everything was warm. When it was time for Grace to leave around 6 that evening, Riley woke and immediately protested. "Do you have to go?" "I'm afraid so, sweetheart. You'll be tired tomorrow, and you need a good night's sleep." "Can we see you again?" Riley's voice was small, scared. "Please." Grace looked at Marcus, a question in her eyes. He nodded quickly, his heart racing. "Coffee on Saturday," he suggested, trying to sound casual. "If you're free." "Can we paint more?" Riley asked, already pulling out her new watercolors. "Absolutely," Grace promised. "We can paint every Saturday if you want." "Every Saturday?" Riley's eyes went wide. "Really? Really? If it's okay with your dad." "It's more than okay," Marcus said. At the door, Riley hugged Grace fiercely, her small arms tight around Grace's waist. "We love you, Miss Grace." Grace's breath caught audibly. She knelt to Riley's level, her hands gentle on the small shoulders. "I love you too, sweetheart. So much already. You'll really come back. I promise. Every Saturday. You couldn't keep me away." Outside, Marcus walked Grace to her car. The night was cold and clear, stars sharp overhead like diamonds scattered across black velvet, their breath fogged in the air between them. "I meant it," Grace said softly, her keys jingling in her hand. "This was the best Christmas I've had since I lost them. I forgot what it felt like to belong somewhere, to have people who wanted me around." "You belong here," Marcus said, the words coming from somewhere deep and true. "With us. If you want to." "I want to," Grace whispered, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "More than anything." They stood there, breath fogging, something unspoken building between them. Marcus wanted to kiss her, wanted it with an intensity that scared him, wanted to close the distance between them and taste her lips and see if she felt this pull too. But it was too soon, too fast. They'd known each other less than 24 hours. "Saturday," he said instead, stepping back before he could do something stupid. "Saturday. I'll be there." He watched her drive away, her taillights disappearing into the snowy night, and knew his life had just changed in ways he couldn't begin to understand. Riley appeared beside him, having snuck out without her coat. "I like her daddy." "Me too, baby." Marcus put his arm around her shoulders. "Me too." "Do you think Mommy sent her to us?" Marcus looked down at his daughter, at her serious dark eyes so much like Sarah's. "I don't know. Maybe. I think she did. I think Mommy knew we were lonely and sent us Miss Grace." Marcus's throat closed up. He pulled Riley close, breathing in her strawberry shampoo scent, and let himself believe it was possible. Saturday coffee became sacred over the next months. Every week, Marcus and Riley would meet Grace at the Magnolia Cafe at 10 a.m. sharp. They'd order their usual hot chocolate for Riley, black coffee for Marcus, vanilla latte for Grace, and settle into their corner booth. Riley would spread out her art supplies and paint, while Marcus and Grace talked about everything and nothing, books and work and frustrations and childhood memories and dreams for the future. Grace told them about growing up in Vermont, about her sister Sophie, who'd wanted to be a marine biologist and plastered her bedroom walls with shark posters, about her brother Lucas, who'd been studying engineering, who'd called Marcus's profession the coolest job in the world, about her parents who'd been married 35 years and still held hands everywhere they went, who'd died holding hands as the plane went down. Marcus told her about meeting Sarah in college, about their whirlwind romance, about how brave she'd been through the cancer treatments, even when she was terrified, about the last conversation they'd had hours before she died, when she'd made him promise to keep living, to not let grief consume him, to find love again someday. "She made you promise that?" Grace asked, stirring her latte. "She said she didn't want Riley growing up thinking love only leads to loss, that I deserve to be happy again." Marcus smiled sadly. "At the time, I couldn't imagine it. The idea of loving anyone else felt impossible, like a betrayal. And now," Marcus looked at her, at the way morning light caught her hair, at the gentle way she guided Riley's brushstrokes. "Now I think maybe she was right." Their eyes met held. Something passed between them, unspoken but understood, and slowly, carefully, they built something beautiful. Grace became a regular fixture in their lives. She came to Riley's soccer games, cheering louder than anyone. She helped with homework patient where Marcus sometimes got frustrated. She taught Riley to cook the two of them, making increasingly elaborate meals, while Marcus pretended to be useful, but mostly just watched them laugh together. For Riley's 8th birthday in March, Grace organized a unicorn-themed party, purple everything, Riley's favorite color. She must have spent hours planning it down to the smallest details. Purple balloons, purple streamers, a purple cake shaped like a unicorn, purple gift bags, even purple lemonade. "You didn't have to do all this," Marcus said, watching Grace hang decorations. "I wanted to." Grace smiled at him from the ladder. "She deserves to feel special. Every kid deserves to feel special on their birthday. You barely know her. I know her well enough." Grace climbed down, standing close enough that Marcus could smell her perfume, something light and floral. "I know she loves art and hates mushrooms and wants to be a veterinarian when she grows up. I know her favorite color is purple, and her favorite movie is Moana, and she still sleeps with the stuffed elephant you gave her when she was a baby. I know her, Marcus, and I care about her." Marcus's breath caught. "Grace, don't." She put her hand on his chest, and he felt his heart hammer against her palm. "Not yet. Let's just get through today." At the party, surrounded by Riley's friends and their parents, Grace fit in seamlessly. She helped with games, served cake, took photos, bandaged a scraped knee when one kid fell playing tag. Other parents assumed she was Riley's mother, and neither Marcus nor Grace corrected them. After the guests left, Riley plopped down next to Grace on the couch, exhausted but happy, her purple party hat askew. "This was the best birthday ever, Miss Grace." "I'm glad, sweetie." "Miss Grace." Riley looked up at her seriously, that look she got when she was thinking something important. "I wish you were my mom." The room went silent. Marcus, cleaning up plates in the kitchen, froze, his hands stilled in the soapy water. Grace's face went pale. "Riley, I know you're not," Riley continued quickly, words tumbling over each other. "I know my mom is in heaven with the angels, but I wish I could have two moms, one in heaven and one here. Is that okay to wish for?" Grace pulled Riley close, tears sliding down her cheeks. "That's the sweetest thing anyone's ever said to me. So you'll stay. You'll keep coming over and teaching me to paint and helping with my homework." "I'll keep coming over," Grace promised, her voice thick. "As long as you want me to." Riley hugged her tighter. "Forever then. I want you to come over forever." Marcus stood in the doorway, watching the two most important people in his life, and knew with absolute certainty that he was in love with Grace Thompson. Summer came fast, all heat and sunshine and long days. Grace closed a major deal for her company, and Marcus finished designing a community center he'd been working on for months. They decided to celebrate with a beach trip to Myrtle Beach, their first real vacation together. The drive down was chaotic and perfect. Riley sang along to Disney songs, Grace joined in, and Marcus pretended to hate it while secretly loving every second. They stopped at roadside attractions, a giant dinosaur statue, a peach-shaped water tower, a mysterious attraction that claimed to have the world's largest ball of yarn. At the beach, Riley built elaborate sandcastles while Marcus and Grace sat on towels watching her play. The sun was warm on Marcus's shoulders and the sound of waves was soothing, and Grace was beside him in a blue sundress that made his heart race. "I need to tell you something," Marcus said suddenly, his voice rough. Grace looked at him surprised by the seriousness in his expression. "Okay." "These past 6 months have been—" He paused, searching for words. "I haven't felt this alive since before Sarah died. Maybe ever. And I keep telling myself we're taking it slow, that we're just friends, that I need to be careful for Riley's sake. But I can't pretend anymore." He took her hand, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might break through his ribs. "I'm in love with you, Grace. Completely terrifyingly in love with you." The color drained from Grace's face. She pulled her hand back, wrapping her arms around herself like she was trying to hold herself together. "Marcus, You don't have to say it back," he said quickly, panic rising. "I just needed you to know. I needed to be honest about what this is for me. But if you don't feel the same way, if this is too much, I understand. We can go back to being friends. I won't—" "It's not that I don't feel the same way," Grace interrupted, her voice cracking. "It's what if I'm not enough? What if I can't be what you need, what Riley needs? I've never been a mother. I don't know how to do this. What if I mess everything up?" Marcus cupped her face, gently making her meet his eyes. "You already are enough. You show up. You care. You love Riley in your own way. That's all any of us can do. But what if it's not?" He kissed her then, soft and tentative, cutting off her spiral of fear. Her lips were salt-sweet from the ocean air trembling against his. For a moment, she froze. Then she melted into him, her hands coming up to grip his shirt. When they pulled apart, Grace was crying, but she was also smiling. "I love you too," she whispered, the words tumbling out like a confession. "I'm so scared, Marcus. I'm terrified, but I love you. I love you so much." "Really? Really?" She laughed through her tears. "I've been in love with you since that first Christmas, maybe even since that first night in the park. I just kept telling myself it was too fast, too soon, that I couldn't possibly." He kissed her again, longer this time. 6 months of careful friendship, transforming into something more, something beautiful and terrifying, and absolutely right. "Daddy and Miss Grace are kissing!" Riley's voice rang across the beach, delighted and scandalized. They broke apart, laughing to find Riley grinning at them from her sandcastle, her hands on her hips. "About time," Riley declared. "I've been waiting forever." Grace laughed through her tears. "You knew." "Of course I knew. You look at each other all googly-eyed. It's gross." Riley wrinkled her nose, but also kind of nice. Marcus pulled them both close, his daughter and the woman he loved, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Complete. Whole. Like maybe, just maybe, everything would be okay. The next few weeks should have been blissful. They'd confessed their love, kissed on the beach, made Riley the happiest kid in the world. Everything should have been perfect. But Grace started pulling away. It was subtle at first. She'd respond to texts a little slower, her responses shorter. She'd cancel their Saturday coffee once because of a work emergency, understandable. Then twice. Then 3 times in a month. She'd show up to dinner looking exhausted and distracted, barely eating, excusing herself early. Within a month, Marcus couldn't ignore it anymore. "You're working late again tonight?" he asked when she called Wednesday evening to cancel their plans. "I'm sorry. There's this product launch deadline, and the team needs me to review everything before we send it to manufacturing, and the team always needs you, Grace. You're the boss. You could delegate." Silence on the other end. Then quietly, "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" Frustration bled into his voice despite his efforts to stay calm. "You've canceled 4 times in 3 weeks. Riley keeps asking when you're coming over. I keep making excuses for you, telling her you're busy with work, but she's starting to wonder if she did something wrong." "She didn't do anything wrong. I know that, but she doesn't. And honestly, Grace, I'm starting to wonder too. Did I push too hard? Say something wrong? Because if you're having second thoughts about us, just tell me. Don't just disappear. I'm not disappearing. But her voice was weak, unconvincing. I'm running a business, Marcus. I have responsibilities. I know that, Marcus said more gently, but this is what you do when things get real or scary. You disappear into work. You did it after you lost your family, worked yourself into the ground so you wouldn't have to feel anything. And you're doing it now. That's not... Grace stopped. He heard her breathing uneven and shaky. I'm not running away. Then what are you doing? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you told me you loved me and then ran as fast as you could in the opposite direction. The silence stretched so long, Marcus thought she'd hung up. Then he heard her crying soft sobs that made his anger dissolve immediately. I can't do this, she whispered. Can't do what? Last week, Riley scraped her knee at the playground. Just a little scrape, barely bleeding. And I froze Marcus. I completely froze because I didn't know if I should put a bandage on it first, or clean it first, or if I needed special ointment, or... Her voice cracked. A 7-year-old falls down and I panic. What happens when it's something bigger, when she's really hurt or sick or needs actual help? Grace, and yesterday she asked me to help with her math homework, 3rd grade edition, and I got the answer wrong. Wrong. She trusted me to help her and I let her down over simple addition. How am I supposed to... She broke off, sobbing harder. Marcus's heart ached. One wrong math problem isn't letting her down. It's not about the math. Grace's voice rose. It's about the fact that I have no idea what I'm doing, and I'm terrified that one day you'll wake up and realize you need someone who actually knows how to be a mother, not someone who's just pretending, not someone who's making it up as she goes. You're not pretending. I am. I don't know the first thing about being a parent. I don't know when kids need to go to the doctor or how to help with homework or what to do when they're scared or sad or angry. I don't know any of it, Marcus. And the more time I spend with Riley, the more I love her, the more terrified I am of failing her. Marcus took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. Then let me be very clear. I don't need someone who has it all figured out. I don't need some perfect TV mom who knows all the answers. I need you. Messy, imperfect, scared you. That's enough. Silence. What if it's not? Grace whispered. Come over this weekend. Talk to me face to face instead of hiding behind work and phone calls. Let us prove to you that you're already doing better than you think. Please, Grace, don't give up on us without giving us a real chance. Another long pause. Then quietly, okay, Saturday, I promise. I'll hold you to that. After he hung up, Marcus sat in the dark living room, head in his hands. Riley appeared at the top of the stairs in her pajamas. Is Miss Grace okay? She's scared, baby. Scared of what? Scared of not being good enough. Of letting us down. Riley padded downstairs and climbed into Marcus's lap, even though she was getting too big for it. But she's already good enough. She's perfect. I know, baby. We just need to help her see that. That Saturday, Grace arrived looking like she hadn't slept in days. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her hands shook slightly as she set down her purse. Riley was at a friend's house, giving them time to talk. They sat on Marcus's back porch, summer heat, thick around them, cicadas buzzing in the trees. I'm sorry, Grace said immediately, words tumbling out. For pulling away. You were right. I was hiding. I got scared and I ran, and that wasn't fair to you or Riley. Why? Because this is real now. Grace twisted her hands together. You love me. I love you. Riley's attached. And that means I could actually hurt you both if I mess up, if I'm not good enough, if I... Grace. Marcus took her hands, stilling them. Breathe. She took a shaky breath. I lost everyone I loved, Marcus. Everyone. My whole family gone in an instant. And the thought of building a family again, of letting myself need people, of loving a child, and having her depend on me. Her voice cracked. What if I lose you too? What if something happens and you're gone and I have to survive it again? I can't. I won't make it through a second time. Marcus's throat tightened. You think I'm not scared. Every time you drive away, there's this moment where I panic, where I think about Sarah leaving for the grocery store and never coming home, where I imagine getting that call again, and this time it's about you. I'm terrified of losing you, Grace. Absolutely terrified. Then why are you pushing for this? Because the alternative is worse. Marcus squeezed her hands. Staying safe and alone isn't really living. It's just existing. I did that for 3 years. I was a good dad. I showed up for Riley, but I was a shell of a person, going through the motions. Then you came along and reminded me what it felt like to actually feel something, to want something for myself, not just for Riley. Grace looked at him. really looked, tears streaming down her face. "I'm not asking you to be perfect," Marcus continued. "I'm asking you to show up, to try, to let yourself be part of this family, even when it's scary, even when you don't have all the answers. Because here's the truth, I don't have all the answers either. Half the time I'm making it up as I go. But I show up anyway. I don't know if I can." "Yes, you can. You already have been. Riley adores you. Not because you're perfect, but because you care. Because you show up. Because you see her." Grace sobbed, covering her face with her hands. Marcus pulled her close, holding her while she cried out years of fear and loneliness and grief. "I'm so scared," she whispered against his chest. "I know. Me too. But let's be scared together." She nodded, arms coming around him. They sat there for a long time, holding each other, choosing bravery over safety. When Riley came home later that afternoon, bursting with stories about her playdate, Grace was still there. And this time she didn't make excuses to leave. She stayed for dinner, stayed to help Riley with her bath, stayed to read bedtime stories. She stayed. Things stabilized after that. Grace stopped canceling. She showed up even when tired, even when work was stressful, even when she was scared. She was learning to trust that this family wouldn't disappear if she looked away. But 3 weeks into the new school year, Riley came home with a blotchy face and red, swollen eyes. "What happened?" Marcus asked, immediately kneeling in front of her. Riley's lip trembled. "Brittany said we don't have a real family." Marcus's heart shattered. "What?" "She said because I don't have a mommy, we're not a real family." Riley's voice broke. "And when I said I have you and Miss Grace, she said that doesn't count. She said Miss Grace isn't my real mom, so it doesn't matter." Grace had just arrived for dinner. She heard the conversation from the doorway, her face going pale. "Oh, sweetie," she whispered, moving toward Riley. But Riley turned on her suddenly, all the hurt and confusion and anger finding a target. 8 years of missing a mother, of being different, of cruel words from a classmate, all of it exploded at once. "You're not my mom," Riley shouted, tears streaming. "You can't be my mom. Brittany's right. I don't have a real family because my mom is gone, and you're just pretending to be her. You're not real." The words hit like physical blows. Grace stood frozen, her face crumbling, hands trembling at her sides. "Riley," Marcus started. "It's not fair," Riley sobbed. "Why did my mom have to die? Why can't I have a real mom like everyone else? Why do I have to be different?" She ran past them both, fleeing to her room. The door slammed hard enough to shake the walls. Grace remained standing in the middle of the living room, shaking. Tears streamed down her face. "I should go," she whispered. "Grace, she didn't mean—" "She's right." Grace's voice was hollow. "I'm not her mother. I'm just—" Her voice broke. "I should go." She grabbed her purse with trembling hands, dropping her keys twice before managing to pick them up. "Please don't leave," Marcus said. "She's hurt and confused. She's 8 years old, and someone was cruel to her, and she's lashing out. But she loves you. You know she loves you." "I need to think." Grace's face was wet with tears. "I'm sorry, Marcus. I need to go." She left before he could stop her, her car pulling away too fast. Marcus stood in the empty living room, torn between chasing Grace and comforting his daughter. He chose Riley. She needed him more right now. He found her curled on her bed, crying into her pillow, her whole body shaking with sobs. He lay down beside her and held her while she cried out all the pain of being different, of missing someone she barely remembered, of a cruel child's words cutting deep into old wounds she didn't know how to heal. "I'm sorry, Daddy," she finally hiccuped. "I didn't mean what I said to Miss Grace. I didn't mean it." "I know, baby. But she doesn't know that. And those words hurt her very much." "I know." Fresh tears. "I love Miss Grace. I was just so mad about Brittany, and I didn't know where to put all the angry feelings, so they came out at Miss Grace instead. I understand, but we need to make this right. Tomorrow, when you're calmer, we'll call her." "What if she doesn't answer? What if she doesn't want to see me anymore?" Marcus pulled Riley close. "She will. She loves you too much not to." But he wasn't sure he believed it. For 3 days, Grace didn't answer calls or texts. Marcus left messages. Riley drew pictures and wrote tearful apologies. But Grace's phone went straight to voicemail. Riley cried at random moments during breakfast, during homework, in the middle of soccer practice. Marcus felt helpless watching both the women he loved hurt and not knowing how to fix it. On the fourth morning, Riley came to him with her watercolors. She'd painted a picture of Grace with tears streaming down her face, reaching for Riley, who stood too far away. "We made her leave, didn't we?" Riley whispered, staring at the painting. "No, sweetie." "We did. I heard her cry when she left. I made her cry." Riley's whole body shook. "I love Miss Grace, Daddy. I don't want her to go away forever. Please, can we tell her we're sorry? Can we fix it?" That night, Marcus called Grace one more time. She answered on the fifth ring, her voice hoarse, like she'd been crying. "Riley wants to talk to you," Marcus said. "She's been devastated. She wants to apologize. She wants you back." Silence. "She really wants me back." "She really does. She loves you, Grace. She was hurt and scared, and she lashed out at the safest person in her life, you. Because deep down she knows you won't abandon her even when she messes up. She trusts you enough to be angry with you." More silence. Then softly, "Does she really love me, or does she just feel guilty?" "She loves you. She painted you a picture. She's written you 5 apology letters. She asked me if we broke you." Marcus's voice cracked. "Please don't give up on us. On her." "Okay." Grace's voice was barely a whisper. "I'll come tomorrow. But Marcus, we need to talk, all 3 of us, about what this is and what I can be to her. We can't keep avoiding it. Tomorrow, we'll figure it out together." The next afternoon, Grace arrived at exactly 4 o'clock. She looked like she'd aged years in 4 days, dark circles under her eyes, face pale and drawn. The moment she stepped through the door, Riley ran to her. "I'm so sorry, Miss Grace," she cried, throwing her arms around Grace's waist. "I didn't mean it. I didn't mean any of it. Please don't go away forever." Grace knelt, pulling Riley close, tears already streaming down her own face. "I'm sorry too, sweetheart. I shouldn't have left like that. I should have stayed and talked to you." "I don't think you're pretending," Riley sobbed. "I don't think you're fake. I love you being here. I love you." "I know, baby. I know." Grace held her tighter, one hand stroking Riley's hair. "I love you too. So much." They held each other for a long time while Marcus watched his own eyes burning with unshed tears. Finally, Grace pulled back, wiping Riley's face gently. "I think we need to talk about something important. All 3 of us. Is that okay?" Riley nodded, hiccuping. They moved to the living room, sitting together on the couch, Grace in the middle, Riley and Marcus on either side. Grace took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "Riley, I want you to know I understand where those words came from. You were hurting. Someone said something cruel to you, and you were processing really big, complicated feelings. I'm not angry with you. I could never be angry with you for being honest about how you feel." "Really?" Riley's voice was small and scared. "Really?" Grace took Riley's hand. "But I need you to understand something too, okay? Something really important." Riley nodded. "I love you very much, and I love your daddy. But I can never be your mommy." Riley's face fell, and tears started again. Grace quickly continued, squeezing her hand. "Your mommy was Sarah. She was special and wonderful, and she loved you more than anything in the whole world. No one could ever replace her. No one should even try. She carried you for 9 months. She brought you into this world. She loved you with everything she had. She will always, always be your mommy." "Then what are you?" Riley asked, her voice trembling. "If you're not my mom, what are you?" Grace smiled gently through her tears. "I'm someone who loves you. Someone who wants to be part of your life, not instead of your mommy, but alongside her memory. Not as a replacement, but as something different. As me. As Grace. Someone who's choosing to be here to care for you, to show up every single day." "Like extra love," Riley said, slowly trying to understand. "Exactly like extra love." Grace's voice grew stronger. "You can love me and love your mommy at the same time. Your heart is big enough for both. Loving me doesn't mean forgetting her or replacing her. It just means more people who love you. More love in your life." Riley was quiet, processing. Marcus held his breath. "And you won't try to make me forget her?" Riley finally asked. "Never," Grace said firmly. "We can talk about her whenever you want. Look at pictures, share memories, tell stories. Your mommy is part of your story, Riley. Part of who you are. And that's beautiful. I would never want to take that away from you. What do I call you if you're not my mom? Whatever feels right to you. Miss Grace is perfect, or just Grace. There's no rush to figure it out. We have all the time in the world." Riley looked at Marcus, then back at Grace. She was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Then she nodded slowly. "Okay, you're our Grace, our extra love." Grace's eyes filled with happy tears. I like that very much. Our Grace. That's perfect. She opened her arms and Riley crashed into them, holding tight. Over Riley's head, Grace met Marcus's eyes, and what passed between them was understanding and relief, and love so deep it hurt. They would be okay. It wouldn't be perfect, but it would be real. And that was enough. The conversation didn't fix everything immediately. There were still hard moments over the next month's moments when Riley missed Sarah and didn't know how to express it. Moments when Grace second-guessed everything. Moments when Marcus felt caught between honoring his late wife and embracing his new life. But they were navigating it together, and slowly trust rebuilt stronger than before because it had been tested and survived. Spring arrived again, bringing with it a crumpled permission slip that Marcus found buried in Riley's backpack. Mother's Day tea at Lincoln Elementary, he read aloud. "Why didn't you give this to me sooner, baby?" Riley shrugged, not meeting his eyes. She picked at her thumbnail. "Because I don't have anyone to bring." "Everyone else will have their real mom there." Marcus's heart broke. "Riley." "Could I ask Grace?" Riley interrupted, looking up suddenly. Marcus blinked, surprised. "You want to ask Grace?" "She's not my mommy," Riley said carefully, like she'd been thinking about this for a while. "I know that. My mommy is in heaven. But Grace is our Grace, our extra love. And I think I'd like her to be there. If she wants to come, if it won't make her sad." Marcus's throat tightened with emotion. "I think she'd love that, sweetheart." When they asked Grace that evening, sitting together at dinner, she started crying immediately. "You really want me there?" Her voice shook. "Yes," Riley said firmly. "You're important to me, Miss Grace, and I don't want to be the only one without someone who loves me there. All my friends will have their moms, and I can't have mine. But I can have you. If you want." "Oh, sweetheart." Grace pulled Riley into her lap, something she'd never done before. "Then I'd be honored, truly honored." The Mother's Day tea was held in the school cafeteria, decorated with construction paper flowers and hand-drawn cards. Grace arrived nervous, wearing a simple blue dress and carrying a small bouquet of purple flowers, Riley's favorite color. Riley grabbed her hand the moment she walked in, beaming. "You came." "Of course I came. I wouldn't miss this for anything." They sat at a tiny table with tiny chairs, Grace's knees nearly up to her chin. Other mothers chatted around them, biological mothers who'd never known the pain of loss, who took their place at this tea for granted. But Grace cherished every second. When Riley presented her with a card she'd made stick figures holding hands with, "Thank you for being my extra love," written in careful letters, Grace pressed it to her chest and cried. "This is the most beautiful thing anyone's ever given me," she said, meaning it with her whole heart. "Really, it's just paper and crayons." "No," Grace cupped Riley's face. "It's your heart, and that makes it priceless." As they left the cafeteria, Riley held Grace's hand tightly. "I'm really glad you came." "Me too, sweetheart. Thank you for inviting me." In the parking lot, Marcus was waiting. He'd taken off work to drive Grace, knowing she'd be emotional. When she got in the car, she was crying, but she was smiling too. "How was it?" he asked, already knowing the answer. "Perfect. Absolutely perfect." Driving home, watching Grace wipe happy tears, Marcus made his decision. He'd been thinking about it for weeks, carrying the idea around like a secret. But now he was sure. It was time. The next week, Marcus went ring shopping alone. He knew exactly what he was looking for, something simple and elegant, something that would suit Grace's understated style. He found it in a small jewelry store downtown. A sapphire surrounded by small diamonds. The sapphire was the deep blue of evening sky, the color of the night they'd first kissed. The diamonds caught light like the Christmas lights in Riverside Park, where everything had begun. When he showed Riley a picture that night, she gasped, "It's perfect, Daddy. She's going to love it." "You think she'll say yes?" Riley gave him a look that suggested he was being ridiculous. "Daddy, she'll definitely say yes. She loves us." "Still nervous?" "Don't be nervous. It's Miss Grace. She's basically already family." They planned it for Christmas Eve, exactly 1 year after the night that changed everything. 3 years since a 7-year-old girl had seen a crying stranger and offered to lend her father. Marcus wanted to go back to where it all started, back to Riverside Park, back to the bench beneath the oak tree, back to where hope began. Walking through the park that evening, Riley could barely contain her excitement. She kept giggling and shooting meaningful looks at Grace, who had no idea what was coming. The park looked exactly as it had 3 years ago, lights strung everywhere, families laughing, the smell of chestnuts roasting. But everything else was different. Marcus wasn't lonely anymore. Riley wasn't sad. Grace wasn't crying alone on a bench. They found the bench beneath the oak tree, now strung with white lights that made everything look magical. Grace sat down, pulling her coat tighter against the cold. 3 years ago tonight, I was sitting right here, she said softly, completely broken, ready to give up on Christmas, on people, on everything. And I found you, Riley said, her voice proud. You did. Grace smiled at her. You saved my life that night, sweetheart. Both of you did. Riley looked at Marcus. He nodded. Riley stood up, suddenly serious. Miss Grace, we have a question to ask you. Before Grace could respond, Marcus knelt in the snow beside the bench. Grace's eyes went wide, her hand flying to her mouth. 3 years ago, Marcus began, his voice shaking despite all his practice, my daughter offered to lend you her father. He pulled out the ring box, opening it to reveal the sapphire sparkling in the light. Tonight, we're asking if you'd like to keep us. Permanently. Grace was already nodding, tears streaming down her face, but Marcus needed to say it all. Will you marry me, Grace? Will you be my wife? Will you choose this messy, imperfect, beautiful family and let us choose you right back? Will you be our Grace, our extra love forever? Yes. Grace choked out the word, more sob than speech. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. Riley shrieked with joy, jumping up and down. Marcus stood, his hand shaking as he slipped the ring onto Grace's finger. And then all three of them were wrapped in each other's arms, crying and laughing and holding on tight. Around them, a crowd had gathered. Mrs. Thompson from the cafe stood there with her phone out, recording the whole thing. Strangers applauded, some wiping their own tears. We're going to be a real family now, Riley exclaimed. We already are a real family, Grace said, voice thick with emotion. We have been for a long time. Marcus pulled her close, kissing her as Riley bounced and the crowd cheered and the Christmas lights twinkled overhead. It was perfect, messy and public and absolutely perfect. I never thought I'd have this again, Grace whispered against his lips. A family, people who love me, a place to belong. You always had a place to belong, Marcus said, right here, with us. Mrs. Thompson approached afterward, beaming. I knew the first Christmas I saw you three together that this would happen. It was only a matter of time. She handed Marcus a small brass plaque. For the bench. I had it made weeks ago, just in case. The plaque read, Here hope begins again. They attached it to the bench, right then, all three of them working together, a permanent reminder of the night that changed 3 lives forever. The wedding was in May when everything was in bloom. Small and intimate, just close friends in Marcus's backyard, decorated with fairy lights and spring flowers. Riley was the flower girl, wearing a white dress with a purple sash, her choice. She took her role seriously, walking down the makeshift aisle with perfect precision, scattering petals with careful concentration. When the officiant asked, Who gives this woman? Riley stood up before Marcus could. I do, she said, clearly, her voice carrying across the small gathering. Because she chose us, and we chose her. And that's what family is, people who choose each other. There wasn't a dry eye in the venue, and Grace covered her mouth with her hand overcome. Marcus grinned proudly at his daughter. They exchanged rings with shaking hands. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Riley stood between them, holding both their hands as they kissed. At the reception, Riley gave a toast. She'd written it herself, practicing for weeks in secret. Miss Grace came into our lives when we needed her most, she read from a slightly crumpled piece of paper. And I think we came into her life when she needed us most, too. She's not my mommy. My mommy is in heaven watching over me, but Grace is my extra love, my here mom, the person who shows up every day and loves me just because. And that makes me the luckiest kid in the whole world, Grace cried through the entire speech. Marcus held her hand, watching their daughter so brave, so wise beyond her years, and felt his heart might burst with love. Sarah would have loved Grace. He knew it with absolute certainty. Sarah would have been grateful that Riley had someone to love her, guide her, be there for all the moments Sarah couldn't be. Life settled into a beautiful rhythm after that. Grace moved in officially, her belongings blending with theirs. They created new spaces, a corner for photos of both families, Grace's and the one she'd built with Marcus and Riley. On the mantle, Sarah's picture sat beside their wedding photo. Both families, both loves honored and remembered. Riley called Grace Grace, or sometimes my Grace. and Grace called her sweetheart or my girl, and it worked perfectly. They talked about Sarah often. Riley would share memories, ask questions, look at old photos, and Grace would sit with her honoring Sarah's memory because she understood. She carried her own family in her heart too. One evening, about 6 months after the wedding, Riley asked if they could visit Sarah's grave. They went together, all three of them, bringing purple wildflowers, Sarah's favorite. Riley knelt by the headstone. "Hi, Mommy. I brought someone to meet you. This is Grace. She married Daddy, and she takes care of me, and I love her a lot. I hope that's okay." Grace knelt beside her, crying silently. "She's not trying to replace you," Riley continued seriously. "Nobody could. But she loves us, and we love her. And I think you'd like her. I think you'd be friends." Grace placed her hand on the cold stone. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for creating Riley. Thank you for loving Marcus. Thank you for the life you gave them before I came along. I promise to love them with everything I have. I promise to honor your memory. I promise Riley will always know who you were and how much you loved her." Marcus stood back watching his daughter and his wife pay respects to his first wife and felt the last piece of his broken heart finally heal. 2 years after the wedding, on a perfect Saturday morning in late spring, Grace woke to the smell of burning pancakes. She sat up in bed smiling as she heard giggling from downstairs and Marcus's voice saying, No, we can save it. Just scrape off the black parts. It'll be fine." Her birthday. She'd almost forgotten. When she came downstairs in her robe, the kitchen was controlled chaos. Marcus stood at the stove looking frazzled, flour somehow in his hair and on his cheek. Riley was at the table surrounded by art supplies and what appeared to be an entire container of glitter spilled everywhere. "Surprise!" they both shouted when they saw her. "We made you birthday pancakes," Riley announced proudly, gesturing to the slightly charred stack. "They're a little crispy, but crispy is just extra crunchy," Marcus added, grinning sheepishly. Grace laughed, pulling them both into hugs, not caring about the flour or glitter transferring to her robe. "I love extra crunchy pancakes." They ate breakfast together, slightly burnt pancakes drowning in syrup, fresh strawberries that were actually perfect, and too much whipped cream. Riley chattered about her plans for Grace's birthday, about the super special surprise she had planned. After breakfast, Riley presented Grace with a card. Her hands shook slightly as Grace opened it. Inside was a drawing of their family tree, carefully colored with her watercolors. At the roots, in neat letters, "Mommy, Sarah in heaven." The trunk showed Marcus with his arms spread wide. The branches showed Riley, arms reaching up, and at the very top, in purple ink, with tiny stars around it, "Mom Grace." Grace's breath caught. She stared at the word Mom, her vision blurring with tears. "Riley is this." She couldn't finish. "Do you like it?" Riley asked, anxiously fidgeting with her napkin. "I wasn't sure if you'd want me to call you that. You said I could call you whatever felt right, and this feels right. But if you don't like it, I can make another card and—" "No." Grace grabbed Riley's hands, tears streaming freely now. "No, sweetheart. I love it. I love it so much." Riley's face lit up with relief. "Really? Really?" Riley took a deep breath like she'd been practicing something. "We wanted to tell you something, Daddy and me. We talked about it a lot." She stood up suddenly formal, and Grace's heart pounded. "You're my mom now," Riley said, her voice clear and sure. "Not instead of my first mommy, she'll always be my mommy in heaven. But you're my mom too. My here mom. The one who shows up every day. The one who helps with homework and comes to my soccer games and teaches me to paint and makes me feel safe." Tears rolled down Riley's cheeks, but she kept going. "I love you, Mom." The word Mom hung in the air like a bell ringing. Grace dropped to her knees, pulling Riley into her arms, sobbing. "Thank you," she choked out. "Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for trusting me with that name. It's the greatest honor of my life." "Is it okay?" Riley asked, pulling back to look at Grace's face. "That I call you Mom?" "It's everything," Grace whispered, cupping Riley's face. "You're everything." Marcus knelt beside them, wrapping his arms around both his girls, his wife, and his daughter, and they held each other while happiness and love and gratitude washed over them. "We love you, Mom," Riley said again, testing out the word with a growing smile. "I love you too, baby," Grace replied, the words coming naturally. "Both of you, more than I ever thought possible." Later that afternoon, Riley asked, "Mom, do you think my mommy in heaven is happy that we have you?" Grace's heart squeezed. She pulled Riley close on the couch. I think your mommy Sarah is very, very grateful that you have someone here who loves you as much as she did. I think she's proud of you for opening your heart to me. And I think she knows that loving me doesn't mean you love her any less. That's what I think too. Riley leaned her head on Grace's shoulder. I'm lucky. I have 2 moms. Most kids only get one. Grace kissed the top of Riley's head, breathing in her strawberry shampoo scent, and felt complete. That evening, after Riley had gone to bed, Grace stood at the window looking out at the stars. Marcus came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. You okay? He asked softly. More than okay. She leaned back into him. I was just thinking about how different my life could have been if Riley had walked past me that night in the park, if I'd said no to hot chocolate, if I'd been too scared to show up on Christmas Day, if I'd run away when things got hard instead of staying and fighting through my fear. But you didn't, Marcus said, kissing her temple. You were brave enough to let us in. You were patient enough to wait for me to be ready. They stood there together, watching the stars, comfortable in the silence. Grace thought about her family, her parents Sophie Lucas, the family she'd lost 8 years ago in a plane crash that had shattered her entire world. She thought about the years of loneliness, of working herself into exhaustion to avoid feeling anything, of sitting alone in that park on Christmas Eve, ready to give up. And she thought about a little girl with a freckle near her ear who'd refused to walk away from someone in pain, who'd offered the simple, profound gift of companionship, who'd saved Grace's life without even knowing it. Thank you, she whispered to the stars, to the family she'd lost. Thank you for sending them to me. Thank you for this second chance at love, at family, at life. Marcus tightened his arms around her. What are you thinking? That hope begins in the smallest moments, in the bravest actions of the kindest people, in the willingness to reach out when it would be easier to walk away. And sometimes, Marcus added, his voice warm with affection, hope begins with a 7-year-old who can't ignore someone crying. Grace smiled, turning in his arms to face him. I love you. I love this life. I love our family. Our family, Marcus repeated like he loved the sound of it. I like that. They kissed as the stars shone overhead, as their daughter slept peacefully in her room, as the life they'd built together, imperfect and beautiful and real, continued on. Hope had begun 3 years ago on a park bench with a simple offer, don't cry, ma'am. You can borrow our dad. And it would continue forever in this home with these hearts that had chosen each other and refused to let go. Because sometimes when you're brave enough to accept help from a stranger, you find exactly what you've been missing. Sometimes the family you need finds you when you need the most. And sometimes love gets a second chance not to replace what was lost, but to create something new and equally precious. Grace had lost one family to tragedy, but she'd gained another through Grace's courage and the unstoppable kindness of a child who believed everyone deserved to be happy. As she stood in Marcus's arms in the home they'd built with Riley, sleeping upstairs, dreaming of art and unicorns, and the mother who loved her from heaven and the mom who loved her here on earth, Grace knew she was exactly where she belonged. Hope begins again, always. You just have to be brave enough to reach for it when it's offered. And Grace had been brave. Riley had been brave. Marcus had been brave. And together they'd built something beautiful from broken pieces. Together they'd found home.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.